Have you ever felt the weight of a room shift? Not when someone spoke, but when someone didn't. Not a word, no gesture, just their presence, calm, composed, unmoved. That's not coincidence, that's power. See, we're raised to believe that volume equals influence. That to be respected, we must shout louder, speak faster, take up more space. But what if that's a lie? What if the real strength, the kind that commands a room, shifts minds, and bends outcomes, moves in silence? I used to think being loud meant being strong. In my younger years, I'd try to dominate conversations, prove my point, show I was in control. But looking back, the ones who truly shaped my life, they didn't need to say much. A calm stare, a thoughtful pause, a single sentence at the right time. And suddenly, everyone listened. That's the paradox of silent strength. You don't need to beg for attention, your stillness demands it. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes magnetic, and not the kind of silence that comes from fear or passivity, but the silence of someone who knows themselves so deeply, they don't need to explain anything. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca didn't just preach virtue. They lived it, quietly, deliberately, consistently. Their strength wasn't flashy, it was disciplined. And in that discipline, they found freedom. Freedom from the chaos of emotion. Freedom from the need to be liked. Freedom from the exhausting performance of always being on. Imagine that, walking into every situation without needing to prove yourself. Choosing words like a sculptor with a chisel, carving impact, not noise. Being underestimated until you're unignorable. Let me be real with you. The world will test your silence. It will try to provoke you, bait you, drag you into the noise. But those who can remain centered, those who don't flinch, they don't just survive, they win. Because silent strength isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's the ability to listen while others talk themselves into circles. To observe, assess, and act with precision. It's a kind of power that isn't given, it's asterisk earned. And once you tap into that, you won't need noise to be heard ever again. Are you ready to walk that path? People reveal the most when they think no one is listening. In a room full of voices, the one who watches silently sees more than anyone speaking ever could. While others scramble to be understood, the one who embraces silence already understands. I've watched people talk themselves into weakness, oversharing, over-explaining, exposing every emotional crack just to be validated. And all it took to unravel them was a well-timed pause. A glance, nothing more. Silence has this eerie way of making people nervous. They start projecting, filling in the gaps with their own assumptions. And that's where the power lies. When you speak less, people listen more. When you move less, they watch you harder. I learned this the hard way. In my early years, I thought cleverness was about sounding smart. I'd try to prove my value by talking, but all I did was show my hand. The people who impressed me most, they didn't need the spotlight. They were patient, measured, precise, and that precision made them lethal. not because they attacked, but because they never had to. The moment you stop speaking just to be heard, you start speaking only to be felt. That's what the Stoics mastered. They weren't loud, they were deliberate. They knew that if you observe long enough, people reveal exactly who they are. They tell you what drives them, what scares them, where they're weak, and once you know that, you don't need to overpower them. You can outmaneuver them. You don't win by dominating the room. You win by understanding it. A Stoic walks into a situation not needing to control it, but to read it, to pick up the subtle shifts, the nervous glance, the insecure laugh, the contradiction between words and actions. That's intelligence, not the kind that wins debates, the kind that wins quietly. In silence, you sharpen your instincts, you conserve energy, you notice everything, the tone, the body language, the unsaid, and in doing so, you stay one step ahead. But here's what they won't tell you. Silence isn't easy. It takes strength to stay silent when your ego wants to speak. It takes discipline to resist correcting someone who's wrong, especially when you know the truth. But the deeper reward is this. When you speak less, you speak truer. Your words stop being noise and start being weapons, not for destruction, but for direction. When people finally hear you, they listen like it matters, because it does. That's the strategy, that's the edge, and that's how silence wins. The truth is, the world doesn't care what you say you're going to do. It cares what you've already done. I used to believe that talking about my goals made them feel more real. Like saying them out loud somehow brought me closer to achieving them. But all it ever did was dilute my energy, wasting it on words instead of work. The more I talked, the less I moved. That's a trap, a subtle one, and one the Stoics avoided masterfully. They knew that silence sharpens the edge of action. That every minute spent explaining yourself is a minute stolen from executing. And when you move with that kind of clarity, without noise, without needing applause, you begin to notice something profound. People start watching. They pay attention not to your promises, but to your patterns. You become respected not for what you said you'd do, but for what you did while everyone else was still talking. There's something deeply magnetic about someone who simply shows up, again and again, without fanfare. No big speeches, no motivational quotes, no declarations, just presence, just results. I've learned that most noise is a cover for insecurity. People talk about their dreams because it comforts them, because it makes them feel in control. But the Stoic doesn't seek comfort. He seeks progress, and progress doesn't need a microphone. You can spot true discipline in the quiet routines no one sees. The early mornings, the late nights, the quiet sacrifices that don't get shared online, and eventually, without warning, it all adds up. That's when people start to ask, "How did you do it?" And you won't have to say a word, because it's already been said, loudly, by your results. There's a calm confidence that comes from building in silence, from not needing applause to feel worthy, from knowing that what you're doing will echo louder than anything you could ever say. Even in a world that rewards noise, people instinctively respect those who let their lives speak for them. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to prove your worth through announcements or updates. Just keep going. Just keep building. People might not notice at first. That's okay. Results are patient. They don't arrive when you want them to. They arrive when they're ready. But when they do, they speak for you, and that voice carries farther than any speech ever could. So don't get caught in the trap of proving. Don't waste your breath on declarations. Let your focus be your language. Let your work be your argument. Let your results be your story. Most people live like gamblers at a rigged table, eyes locked on the outcome. Hearts chained to the result. Win, and they feel worthy. Lose, and the world collapses. But what if you could step away from that trap? What if you could give everything, risk everything, and still remain whole, no matter what happens? That's the quiet revolution of detachment. The Stoic doesn't train himself to feel nothing. He trains himself to feel fully, and yet not be ruled by it. I used to think detachment meant indifference, like shutting off emotion, becoming cold, unreachable. But that's not what true detachment is. It's not apathy, it's clarity. It's knowing that you can care deeply, fight fiercely, love completely, and still not be defined by what comes back to you. That's power, real power, because when your worth is no longer tied to outcomes, the world loses its grip on you. Think about it. The person who doesn't crave applause can speak with honesty. The person who doesn't fear rejection can act with courage, and the person who doesn't depend on winning, they've already won. That's why the Stoic is feared, admired, respected, because nothing owns him. Not praise, not failure, not even success. He plays the game fully, but never forgets it is a game. And that's what makes him dangerous, because when the world can't push your buttons, it can't control your moves. The crowd can cheer or boo, but you remain the same, anchored, focused, unshaken. I've watched people crumble after one loss, one insult, one moment that didn't go their way. And I've also seen people rise, not because they had less to lose, but because they had less to cling to. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care so much that you won't let the outcome distort your values. You do the work, you stay present, and when it's over, you let go. That's strength, that's freedom. When you detach, you stop chasing and start creating. You stop reacting and start leading. Life doesn't control you. You meet life head on, with full presence and zero desperation. You no longer need the world to tell you who you are, because you already know. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to be real, to act with honor, to stay grounded when storms rise. And in that detachment, in that quiet refusal to be owned by outcome, you rise above it all. You don't float away, you stand firm. You don't run, you remain. You don't lose yourself, you find yourself. And that's when you become truly free. The truth is, character isn't something you post about. It's not in your bio. It's not in the stories you tell others to look good. Character is revealed in your habits, in your patterns, in the tiny choices you make when no one's clapping. I've learned that the hardest part of building character is how boring it can feel. It's not glamorous, it doesn't give you quick hits of validation. It asks you to say no when no one would judge you for saying yes. To keep going when no one would blame you for stopping. And to hold the line, especially when the world tells you it's okay to fold. You won't always be rewarded for doing the right thing. In fact, sometimes you'll be punished for it. You'll watch others cheat and win, lie and rise, pretend and get praised, and you'll be tempted. I've been tempted, we all have, but that's the test. That's where the real building begins. Because what good is a man who only has integrity when it's convenient? What good is discipline when it only shows up on the days you feel like it? The Stoics understood that virtue isn't a part-time job. It's a full-time way of living. A commitment to being solid when the world is soft. Reliable when others flinch. Grounded when chaos reigns. That kind of man. He doesn't need to talk about strength. He is strength, and when everything else falls apart, money, status, reputation, it's character that holds. You'll know it's real when you lose something and don't lose yourself. When the storm comes and you bend, but never break, people might not notice right away. That's okay. You don't build yourself for applause. You build yourself for impact. And that impact begins quietly, in how you treat someone who can't help you, in whether you tell the truth when a lie would be easier, in whether you show up, not when it's popular, but when it's needed. That's the steel that lives beneath the surface, and eventually, it shines through. People feel it in your presence, in the way you speak without shouting, in the way you hold eye contact without flinching, in the way you walk into a room and don't need to prove anything, because you already know who you are. That's character, not performance, not perfection, just a relentless pursuit of your highest self. Quiet, consistent, unshakable, and once you've built it, truly built it, there's nothing the world can throw at you that you can't carry. Because it's no longer about what happens to you, it's about who you've become. When you move through the world like a Stoic, you stop dancing to the rhythm of chaos. You no longer flinch when others panic. You don't sprint when the crowd starts running. You become still, not because you're frozen, but because you're grounded. I used to think calm meant passive, like you weren't really in the game if you weren't loud or aggressive. But the more I watched people who truly had power, the more I saw it was the quiet ones who moved everything. They didn't chase energy, they were the energy. That's what the Stoic teaches us. You don't need to react. You respond, intentionally, precisely, with clarity. You don't waste your breath trying to win every argument. You don't explain your worth to people who don't value it. Instead, you let your choices carry the message. You walk into every situation with the understanding that your peace is not up for negotiation. That your focus is not a gift to be scattered. And because you live this way, people start to notice something different about you. Not right away. At first, they'll think you're distant. They might even call you cold. But over time, the truth reveals itself. You're not distant. You're discerning. You're not cold. you're controlled. They'll see it in how you don't chase validation, in how you don't beg for attention, in how you keep showing up, not for applause, but because you said you would. That's what makes you magnetic. In a world starving for attention, you become rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. There's a certain gravity to a person who's built from the inside out, who's been through fire but doesn't wear their scars like excuses, who's stripped away the noise and replaced it with principle. That's how you move like a Stoic. You walk with intention, you speak with restraint, you choose your battles, and you learn to sit in silence, not because you're unsure, but because you're so sure you don't need to be loud. And when things go wrong, and they will, you don't crumble. You don't panic, you return to the foundation you've built. Discipline, presence, and unshakable clarity. That's the edge, not because you're pretending, but because you've earned it. You've done the hard work. In the dark, when no one was watching, you've kept promises to yourself that no one will ever know about. And now, your life is the echo of those promises. So while others are chasing, shouting, proving, you're just moving, steady, focused, unbothered, because you know who you are, and that's more than enough. You've made it this far, not because the words were loud, but because something deeper resonated, something still, something strong. That's the essence of Stoicism, not a mask you wear, but a way you live, not for the world to notice, but for you to know that you can be the eye in the storm, that while others bend to chaos, you can remain rooted while they perform. You refine while they reach outward for approval. You turn inward for alignment. And I'll be honest, this path isn't easy. It's lonely sometimes. Quiet strength doesn't come with cheering crowds or viral applause. It's built in private, it's tested in silence, and it's validated not by the world, but by how well you sleep at night. That's the legacy the Stoics left us. Not just lessons in resilience, but proof that you don't need to overpower to win. That discipline beats drama. That stillness shatters noise. I used to think I had to prove myself in every room. That silence meant weakness, but the more I studied, the more I lived, the more I let go the stronger I became. And now, I don't speak unless it's needed. I don't react unless it's deliberate. I don't chase, I build. You can do the same, not by being perfect, but by being principled, and the beauty of it. You don't need permission, you don't need a stage, you only need a decision to walk the path that few dare to walk. The one that trades noise for presence, impulse for intention, approval for inner alignment. So ask yourself, are you ready to move in silence and let your results do the speaking? Are you ready to stop performing and start becoming? If that answer is yes, then you already know what to do. Join us. Subscribe to Echoes of Stoicism. This is where the noise ends and the clarity begins. Drop a comment below that simply says, "Quiet power," if you're walking this path with me. Not because you need to be seen, but because you're making a silent vow. A vow to be steady, a vow to be real, a vow to master the only thing you'll ever truly control, yourself. And as you step back into the world, remember this: when you carry peace like a weapon, discipline like a compass, and silence like a language, you don't have to announce your presence. The world will feel it.